Hello, my name's Neil, and welcome to Chapter 5, Part 3 of my life story. If you keep watching, you can find out what I was doing on my 59th birthday. And if you come back for Chapter 6, that's going to be when I talk about the why and how I ended up living in a camper van. In my last vlog, I talked about 2022, and it was mostly a mountain biking year. I sort of got the bug earlier on in the year, and I went to all of these mountain bike centres up on the roads, off roads, and on their different trails. But I think I was getting a little bit too overconfident, and I was going on some of these red routes which were a little bit above my skill set really, and had a few bumps and scrapes, heading down steep hills through rocks and over jumps and tree roots. I decided that it was getting a bit too dangerous for me, so I decided to give that a rest for a while. So then I was looking for something else to do, something adventurous but not as dangerous. I'd read in I think it might have been a Mountain or a Rambling magazine about the 3 Peaks challenge. This sounded like something might be worthwhile doing. However, the challenge was to do 3 peaks in 24 hours or 48 hours. And I don't think I could manage that in a month. So I started looking at it. The 3 peaks up in Snowdonia, Snowdon, and the Lake District, Skyfall Pike, and then up in Scotland you got Ben Nevis. Well, where I was based most of the time for work, sort of in between Snowdon or Skyfall Pike. So I got 5 days holiday at the end of September, last week in September. And I've checked out the weather, and the Lake District looked like it was going to be raining all the time. The weather looked a bit better for Snowdonia. So I packed the tent up in the car and I drive to North Wales. Already knew the area because that was the last place I went cycling, mountain biking. So I camped about 8 miles away from Snowdon. Got there, put the tent up, and it started raining. Typical. So it rained all night, cleared up a bit in the morning. I thought, right, okay, I'll get in the car and I'll drive to Snowdon and have a look at it. Because when I've been looking on the maps, it looked like there was different ways to go up it. So I followed the roads and I ended up in Llanberis. I think it's called Llanberis. And I parked up there, and that's when I discovered you can get a train to the top of Snowdon. Now that for me wasn't really an adventure. Get a train, go up the top, get at the top, have a cup of tea, get on the train, come back down. I was surprised that they actually put a train track up there. I'm not quite sure. Well, I suppose if you weren't very fit and everything, you still wanted to do it, it's a good option. But for me, really wasn't going to be an option. And also the track up from the same place, from the train station, looked like it was just steps. I don't fancy just climbing up steps. While I was there, it started raining again. Back in the car, drove back to the campsite. I'd picked up some maps in Landberries, and I had to look at which way I could go. Now the next day, still a bit rainy. It looked like it was going to clear up. So I got back in the car and I drove around to a place which was the start of one of the ways to go up was Watkins Path. So I reconnected. I had a look around where I could park. There were some car parks near there, so I could park up there and then set off from there. But unfortunately, the weather forecast for that day was low cloud and rain again. So it wasn't going to be that day. But I decided that's the way I was going to do. It was a slightly longer path, a bit more off the beaten track, and it looked like it was going to take me quite a few hours to do it, but it would have been achievable. Checking the weather, the next day looked like it was going to be a nice day. So after a cold night in the tent, I woke up to bright sunshine, and it was my 59th birthday. So I thought, this is it, this is the day I'm going to do it, regardless of what happens with the weather. So I drove to the car park I'd found the day before and parked up and set off up the Watkins Path. The first part of the walk was the gradient wasn't very steep, it's fairly easy. Followed a valley up, found some old stone buildings, mine workings or something like that, I think they were. Seemed all right, carried on. Started getting a bit steeper, a bit more difficult. And as I went further up, it got a little bit more difficult and a bit steeper. And I got to a place, it was a little bit of a plateau. And then the next bit looked like it was up a really, really steep climb. And I got this far, so I was thinking, that looks a bit hairy. But I was watching people go up it and watching people coming down it. And I thought it was the top. I thought, I've just got to get up that last bit and I'll be at the top. Well, I was umming and ahhing about it, wasn't sure. I had to build up my courage, if you like, and off I went. And it was quite steep and it was quite rocky, and it was like climbing on my hands and knees up some of it because it was precarious. Halfway up, I find a guy sat there fixing it. What a job to do, fixing the stones, making the path a bit better. I managed to get up that bit, and I thought, hey, I've reached the top. Finding that wasn't the summit, there was some more to climb up. Eventually, I get to the top, and there's a massive cafe shop, and obviously the train station for the top. It was really busy. I thought, yes, I've climbed the first one. And then I remembered I've got to get back down. Now that last bit I'd scrambled up looked a bit too hairy for going back down. So I decided to follow the other trail down, which followed the train track. And this was quite steep in places, but it was mostly steps. They'd actually made a steps path all the way down. Quite boring, actually. I'm glad I didn't climb up that way. But eventually I made it down to the bottom. So that's one peak ticked off. Luckily from Llanberis, I could get a bus and it took me back around to where my car was. So my next day was going to be my final day before returning home. And I drove to Snowdonia, the national park. Some beautiful scenery. And some really big boulders. And I saw some guys bouldering. And going back a while, I'd done a bit of bouldering in an indoor climbing wall place. I had my climbing shoes with me and I thought, oh, I'll give it a go. So I stopped off and did a bit of bouldering. Not very much because I didn't have a mat and I didn't want to fall and hurt myself. Last night I was there, it rained again. Now this being in the tent, no heating, getting a bit cold now. I'm starting to think about the tent's not really going to be for me going forward. But it's what I had. Anyway, that was my first one and I returned home. Now, Scotland was a long way off. I didn't have very much holidays left in 22. So I had 3 days off end of November. Checked the weather, didn't look that bad. So I decided to I'll go and do Skyfall Pike. Again, stick the tent in the car, drive to the Lake District, find a park up campsite by a pub. Just got the tent up and it started raining. Typical Lake District, said the weather's going to be nice, it starts raining. Uncomfortable night, quite windy, quite cold. Again, I'm thinking this tent's not for me. I'm going to have to get rid of the tent or get something better. Maybe a caravan. Second day, it hadn't stopped raining. Rained all day. Oh, thinking, I've got 3 days and it's rained. Third day, it's clear. Weather forecast for scattered showers. Right, so it's my last day, 8 o'clock, off I get, day pack, walking boots, poles, and off I try. Again, it was, initially it's a gradient wasn't that bad, then it started getting a bit boggy, a bit steeper, a bit slippy. I think with a lot of these peaks they've put in pathways, stones into the path to try and safeguard it really, I think, but it made it a little bit slippy. I think I was about an hour and a half into the walk, going up the hills, and all of a sudden the cloud came in. a really low cloud and like a mist. Then the rain came back. Now I was unsure what to do. It was getting cold. I was getting wet. Visibility was coming down. Now, being a sensible person, I decided to abandon my attempt. Which was probably quite lucky, because I later heard that a couple of people had to be rescued who'd gone up further. So my 3 days was a waste in that I didn't achieve my aim. So Skyfile Pike, I'd have to wait. So I packed up a wet tent and drove back home. I was just a bit disappointed. It's a bit of a drive and it was wet and cold. Didn't really enjoy it. I'm back at work over the Christmas period, New Year period, really busy at work. New Year, new holidays. So in March I had 10 days off. I'm going to go up to Scotland. I've been to Fort William on my cycle tour. It's quite a long way up. So I drive up the A1. I set off fairly late in the day. And I knew I wasn't going to manage to make it all the way up to Fort William. So I stopped off a service station and trying to find somewhere to stay for the night. Now Glasgow was sort of like more than halfway. So I looked on the internet and found a place to stay on the outskirts of Glasgow. Only £15 for the night. I got there and it was a bit not a fantastic looking area, to be honest. And I found the person who run the place, and I had to meet him and he gave me the key. Now the place was like a mixture between a hostel and a bed and breakfast, in that you had your room or shared room. I mean, luckily I had a room to myself, and there was a communal place for making breakfast, but you could also get breakfast in as well. But like I say, a bit of a rough area, but it was all right for the night. And then after that, the next day, I'm off in the car again. Driving up, go through Glencoe, and eventually I made it to Fort William. Now I was camping again. Weather looked like it was going to be fairly decent for the for the next few days anyway. And I found a campsite at the bottom of Ben Nevis, called Glen Nevis campsite. I packed up, put up the tent. What did it do? It started raining. Not having much luck with the rain. The weather forecast for the next day was intermittent rain. I woke up early, still raining. About 10 o'clock it cleared up a little bit. But the weather forecast was for rain, showers. So I wasn't going to attempt to go up Ben Nevis in the rain. So I spent that day discovering the campsite, which was quite big. And I followed a trail which took me to a waterfall, which was quite a really nice waterfall, quite a nice walk. And it did rain, on and off. I got back to the tent quite muddy and wet. Went and had a shower, and then went and found the clubhouse. Had a nice meal, a couple of beers. Had a nice night in there. Had a nice night's sleep as well. So the next day, it was fine. And the weather forecast was going to be for a decent day. So this was my time to do the walk. So I found the little visitors centre for Ben Nevis, picked up a couple of maps for it, and set off up the hill, or the mountain, should I say. Now, like I said before, it's because these mountains are tourist attractions in their own right, pathways have been put in. Now for me, I like scrambling up hills, not on pathways really. It just feels like you're going up steps. But this is the path I had to follow. The main tourist path. It was a long, hard slog, I must admit. I kept thinking, now, around the next bend, I'm going to be there. Just a bit further up, I'm going to be there. And eventually, I did get there. So I got to the top of Ben Nevis. So that's another peak to be ticked off. Again, what goes up has to come down. So I had to come back down. Coming down was a little bit more treacherous, I think. Yeah, definitely a bit more treacherous. I mean, I went off the path a little bit coming down, so I could find my own way down, which was nicer, and it was less busy. Because the day I was there was lots and lots of people going up and down. It's one of those sort of places where your average Joe with a family just oh, it's Ben Nevis, let's go to Ben Nevis today. So they've turned up thinking it's just a walk. I mean, I was going down and I found a young couple with two young kids in flip-flops. Flip-flops. No idea why they thought they could walk it up in flip-flops. This is like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were about a quarter of the way up. I had to stop and say something, because the young kids would, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6, not dressed for it, no water, no food, nothing. They must have just thought, oh, well, it's a day out, let's go out for a day out and we'll go up this hill. So I suggested to them that they're better off turning around and going back down. It was too late in the day, they would never made it. They didn't have the right kit. And I've come across that quite a few times on hills. They're quite dangerous. You know, you have to be prepared for these things. And as I say, people just turn up and think, oh, we'll just give it a go. No preparation, no thinking about it. And these are the ones who get stuck and have to be rescued. And all it does is take a little bit of preparation. So I finally got back down to the bottom. 6 hours it took. It was a fair decent walk. My calves were killing me. Yeah, that was quite an arduous one, that. More so than Snowdonia. I think it was because of the steps as well. The pathway, some bits were quite deep steps. And also, it's more difficult coming down. It puts a lot more strain on your legs, I think. Your thighs and everything else. So, as I say, that's 2 done. Just a shame about the other one with the weather. So, got back down and a nice big lunch, late lunch. I thought about what else to do. And I was thinking, Fort William, it's not that far to Skye actually. So the next day I packed up. I'd actually booked and paid for that night as well, but I thought, well, the weather's looks like it's going to be quite fine. I'll drive up to Skye, have a look at the Cullen Mountains, and that's what I did. I drove to Skye, found another place to camp near a pub, surrounded by mountains. I spent the next day, lovely, glorious, sunny day, walking the hills. I didn't attempt to do the hills there. I mean, they're proper mountains, and you need mountaineering kit. But the lower hills, the Munros, are doable without that sort of stuff. I spent 2 days on Skye. I'm halfway through my trip. The next day I went off and found, what's it called, the Fairy Mountains, Fairy Lakes, Fairy Streams. Anyway, it's a park up with fairy in it. I didn't see any fairies, lots of streams and little waterfalls, but it was very boggy, very boggy. I was covered in mud around that day. So I camped another night, decided, okay, it's time to start making my way back down north. Now when I was driving up, I drove through Glencoe. So on my way back, I decided to stay in Glencoe. So I did an overnight in Glencoe, 2 nights. So the second day, I decided to do the Three Sisters. Weather wasn't fantastic. I only managed to climb onto 2. No snow, but beautiful views, lots of rivers and streams. Still quite boggy though. But a beautiful area. Haven't been there in winter. Something I've never really done is winter sports. That might be something I might think about doing in future. Learn how to ski. That might be quite interesting. Anyway, so a long drive back north, and I'm back at work. Now I've got, this is now, we're in 2023 now, March 2023. I'm still thinking about the last pig to do though. I've got 4 days off over May bank holiday. Weather looks like it's going to be fine. So I drive back up to the Lake District, camping again. With it being a bank holiday weekend, I had campsites were jam-packed, the pubs were packed, the walks were packed. Second day there, it rains again. This camping lax, it's not going to be for me, I think. Getting too old for it. Getting wet, not being able to dry out properly, no heating. It's not ideal. chilly in your bones. Next day, bright sunny day. This time determined to get to the top. So I'm following the path, the same one I did before. Not as bad, still a little bit marshy in places. But I think I'd made a mistake because it was a bank holiday. Lots and lots of people, all doing the same path. It gets quite difficult when you have to keep stopping, waiting for other people. So I tried to find ways off the path, which you're not supposed to do. I mean, that's the whole reason they put the pathway there, is to follow the path. But that's quite boring. So I managed to get off the path a few times. Again, it was one of these mountains where you think you've reached the top, but you haven't. It's a false peak. Gets all slaty as well as you get closer to the top. A bit more of a scrambly type. Can't just walk up normally. Managed to get to the top. Nothing there really. Not like in Snowdon when you've got a cafe on the top. A little hut. That's all what's up there. I suppose if you get stuck on the top, you can hide in there. And the summit was covered in people. When I was there, I was looking at it, and there seemed to be lots of different ways to climb up, which might have been better than the one I've found. Maybe for another time. So that's it, my 3. I've done the 3 peaks challenge. Well, actually not, because I didn't do it in 24 hours, but I climbed all 3 peaks. Eventually got back down. I had a celebrity drink in the pub, which was called the Woolpack, which is in Emmerdale. Well, the pretend ones in the Emmerdale on TV, but this one was called the Woolpack as well. Nice food. Sat outside eating pizza and a few beers to celebrate. So I've done all the 3 peaks and I'm not yet 60. Quite an achievement for me, I think. But I've decided at that stage, I need to find something which I can be mobile in to go on my adventures, which is not a tent. Still thinking about a caravan. When I was a kid, my parents had a towing caravan, and we went on holiday in that. Not sure about it. I need something better than a tent. So that's the end of part 3. Hope you enjoyed my little talk about a little adventures. Give us a like, give us a comment, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.